responsible, and all the evidence points to him.
Look, but hang on a second. There are degrees of culpability. She is saying that he is culpable because it's an act of aggression on British soil by the Russian state. She has broadly dismissed the idea that somehow this has got, that some rogue elements have got hold of this.
Well, the point about that is we have to demonstrate to the international community the evidence for that, and then we can build that coalition. Look, you may remember this, like back in 2006, I campaigned for Anna Politkovskaya when she got killed, the journalist. I was secretary of the NUJ. There have people been murdered on a regular basis. Anyone who opposes the regime or who exposes the corruption, they've been murdered systematically. This has been going on for years.
So just to be clear and unambiguous on this, unlike the Chief of Strategy for Jeremy Corbyn, Seamus Milne, you have an unambiguous view that Putin is a dangerous and bad leader.
That's exactly what we've all said, and you mentioned Seamus Milne, that's exactly what he said as well. He's repeated time and time again that we support exactly what the Prime Minister said, and we condemn Russia for this, condemn them. I believe this is a pattern of behaviour we've seen. As I said, way back in 2006 I was flagging this up and have done campaign after campaign. Jeremy, way back in 1999 actually, on Chechnya, led the campaign of condemning Putin about what he was doing, murdering people in Chechnya then.
But what do you think is more likely? OK, let's put it this way. What is more likely? That this was either ordered by Putin and a part of his machine, or that they simply lost control of this awful nerve agent and somehow the mafia or some rogue element got hold of it? What's most likely?
Well, I think it's important that we base our judgments on the evidence.
Where does the evidence direct?
Let me just it's important that we base this on the evidence. But there's a pattern of people being murdered here.
So?
Pattern. So therefore it leads you to the conclusion that Putin has questions to answer, because this is highly likely this could be a state execution. But what we don't do in this country is that we don't lead to conclusions without the evidence. And what we're saying to our international partners, working with the chemical weapons inspectors as well, working with Portland Down, we've got to now produce, we will now produce the evidence that leads us to a judgment that they can rely upon. In that way, we can effectively build the coalition. If we leap to conclusions without the evidence, it will undermine the ability to build that international coalition. So therefore, the point that Jeremy was making the other day is we have to be careful how we handle this if we're going to be really effective in tackling Putin and the barbaric acts that his regime is undertaking.
Now, Seamus Milne, as I'm sure you know, told journalists that there were reasons to mistrust what the intelligence services were saying about this because they got it wrong in Iraq.
No,
do you agree with that?
No, what he said...
No, I was there. I heard him say it. It is what he said.
What he was saying is how you interpret the evidence, and that's the most important thing. Whatever evidence is there, it's how you interpret it. The key thing now is we agree with the Prime Minister. Whatever happens, Russia is responsible for this.
Have you seen all the intelligence you need to see?
No, no. There will be further, I'm sure, Privy Council...
Will you put in a request to see more of the intelligence?
Of course I will. I'm a Privy Council member, so therefore, as other Privy Council members have the right to do it, to see more of that evidence.
And will Jeremy Corbyn also ask to see more of the evidence?
Well, he has done. But
he hasn't seen it yet.
He's had one briefing on the Privy Council auspices, and others will take place. The key issue for us now is, look, Prime Minister's right. Russia's to blame. Whatever they say, Russia's to blame. So now we've got to build, exactly as she is doing, the international coalition that takes effective action. What Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader, said, kicking out diplomats is symbolic. It has to be done, and we support that.
Yep.
But what really hits them is the economic sanctions.
And you want a new tax?
Well, there's a whole range of things that we put forward. I put forward in the general election, by the way, a levy...
Hang on, your colleagues have just emailed me saying that you're going to be calling for a new tax.
No,
so that is right,
yes,
you are calling for a new tax on the oligarchs.
In the general election, we said we wanted to introduce a levy on properties owned by foreign companies in tax havens. A lot of those are Russian oligarch owns. So we want
it's not specifically for Russian oligarchs, it's just it's broadly a tax on those.
We know from the evidence so far at least a quarter of it will be for Australia. But also, we want the Magnitsky clause, but we put it in amendments up to legislation 4 weeks ago. The government opposed it. They're now accepting that. This has got to be tough action. Hit them in their pockets. That's where it'll be effective.
So just very briefly, because we're about to run into the break, but you've got your great friend from your own benches, Chris Leslie, over there, saying that he felt that the tone of what Jeremy Corbyn said earlier this week, where he attacked the government, for example, cuts to Foreign Office spending, was just inappropriate at that moment. This should have been a moment where the parties came together in the face of this threat from the Russians.
It is, I think it's the role of a responsible opposition to ensure that they have an honest critique of the government, what they're doing, support them when they're right, and that's what Jeremy did. He said, I support and condemn these actions, supported the Prime Minister on her conclusions.
But do you understand why some people, including those in your own party, felt uncomfortable at seeing him attack the Prime Minister at that moment?
It wasn't an attack, it was a critique. It was asking questions about investment in diplomacy, it was asking questions about where we go from here and building the international coalition. That's what oppositions do, and it's a constructive critique. I think others have misread that.
We've got so much more to talk about. Don't go away, please, because John McDonnell will still be with me after the break.